Well, over the past couple of weeks, a lot of the stories that have been making news have been about unidentified flying objects, as they've sometimes been referred to, or just different aircraft that have not been able to be made contact with by our military or by other officials at the government level being shot down. Of course, we had the Chinese spy balloon that circumnavigated the continental United States. And then we even had a balloon here in Michigan that was shot down by the Canadian and the U.S. Air National Guards over the past couple weeks over Lake Huron. Here to join us to talk about some of these sort of incidents, but also others throughout the years that have happened in Michigan that maybe haven't gotten as much press, is Bill Konkolesky, the Mutual UFO Network, from the Mutual UFO Network and their Michigan chapter. Bill, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you on. Let's start by talking about what the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, is and some of the work that you do.
Okay, the Mutual UFO Network is the world's largest civilian UFO investigation group. We've been around since 1969. We have 5,000 members in over 40 countries. Here in Michigan, we get about 200 sightings reported to us yearly, which is an impressive number for a group like ours that many people haven't heard of. And we do our best to investigate what comes into us. On a good year, we can identify up to about 95% what comes in, usually anywhere between 80 to 95%. And then it's that last 5% that's the really interesting stuff that keeps you motivated and keeps you in the game.
So when these reports come in, you said over 200 usually a year is what Michigan is getting of these reports of UFOs or similar phenomena. When these reports come in, what does the Mutual UFO Network's Michigan chapter then do to investigate that and look into it? Was it actually something that could be extraterrestrial, or was it some normal everyday aircraft? How do you look into that as an independent network?
Okay. One of the things that's great about modern technology is it provides all sorts of tools available to us, including several flight tracking applications, a lot of um, astrological, um, astronomical, pardon me, applications. And when somebody reports something to us, if they say, "Oh, I saw this strange stationary light in this part of the sky," it's very easy to look and say, "Oh, Venus." Yes, people still report Venus. If somebody says they saw an object moving at this speed from this direction, punch it into the flight tracker, and there you go. You see that there was a flight overhead at that time. People misidentify drones. People misidentify sky lanterns or Chinese lanterns. People misidentify Starlink satellites. That's a big one that we've been getting lately. Weather phenomena. There's all sorts of things that people see. They don't know what it is, and they hope that we can help them. And to whatever degree we can, we do. And so we, as a group that investigates this phenomena, we do not want to get people excited about the possibility of the unknowns. We want to help them identify what they've seen primarily as our main mission.
We're joined on today's program by Bill Konkolesky. He is the Michigan State Director of the Mutual UFO Network and their Michigan chapter. Joining us on the program today. You can find more information and ways you can get involved at MUFON.com, MUFON.com, for more information, including information about their local chapters as well. And so when these sorts of things start making news, and you have an object like was noticed by both Canadian and American military forces in the last couple weeks over Lake Huron, and you have that sort of information that's already been collected in some accounts by the government or what you see in the local news, how does that help you build on your own investigations too, to have that additional content, that additional information that others have also investigated as you're looking into these things that people almost automatically would go and ultimately assume it's something potentially extraterrestrial that may have been up there, or something that is truly a big mystery?
Okay, I suppose there's a couple things I can say as a follow-up to what you just said there. One of the things is people were wondering if the thing shot down over Lake Huron was possibly extraterrestrial. And if you look at the timeline of it, first it was spotted in Montana, It was allowed to fly over the entirety of Montana, over the entirety of Wisconsin, over the entirety of Michigan before it was ultimately taken down over Lake Huron. And it took a couple days to do this. And that sure doesn't sound like some sleek extraterrestrial craft to me. You know, if UFOs fly that slowly, how would they ever get to our planet from theirs? You know, haha. But you know, it really acted like a balloon. Um, the strange shape of it, kind of octagonal with the things dangling off of it. Sure, it's an unusual shape, but it was certainly an easy target. It just really doesn't sound like there's any reason to get excited, like it could have come from somewhere else. And on top of that, while they haven't recovered anything other than parts of the original Chinese balloon that came down originally, there is this group now out of Illinois that says that they think that the Air Force shot down their hobbyist group's balloon. They had this group out of Illinois sent up a balloon, I guess, that circumnavigated the Earth 7 times, was up in the Yukon area, and suddenly disappeared at the same time that an F 22 was scrambled and fired a $400,000 missile to take down whatever it was they saw. And now this group is saying, yeah, that was probably our balloon.
We're joined today by Bill Konkolesky from the Michigan chapter of the Mutual UFO Network. He is their Michigan State Director on today's edition of the Megacast. And Bill, over the years you've been, you've been involved with the Mutual UFO Network. We've spoken to you on some of our shows previously, and so you've been with this network for a number of years. What are some of the more interesting findings that you and others you've worked with in the Michigan chapter have found over the years of your research?
Findings? Well, one of the things in a broad sense is that um, a lot of people think that when somebody sees something unusual, it's always this person out in the middle of nowhere. Possibly they've got some sort of issues personally. And, you know, a lot of credible people report things they can't identify. And the truth of it is that whenever we put onto our software that we have, hey, give us the last 100 sightings, it's always a population map. Wherever there are more people see things. And the phenomena is year round. Although there are big events historically for maybe a day or two, or maybe even a month or so, there's some high activity. Pretty much it's a steady flow of phenomena that occurs throughout the year. And when I say phenomena, mostly identifiable phenomena. Again, there are some interesting ones that we get. Back in 2021, there was an interesting case where a gentleman was in Linden, Michigan. It was 3:30 a.m. He's driving down the road, pitch dark, and he sees what he described as a silver monolith with strange lights flying around it. And then as he drove past it, this orange teardrop light appeared on the road, almost as a warning to tell him to go and get out of there, which he did quite quickly. And then the next day during the daylight, he drove past there and found a 30-foot patch of dead grass where he had seen that unusual sighting. And so we went out there and we took soil samples, sent it to our lab in Missouri, and it came back that it was pretty much just standard chemicals that you find. It was nothing strange, except it just happened to be at the same place he had his sighting. So we get some interesting ones that require a little bit more legwork to try to identify. So, yeah, the ground trace was certainly man-made chemicals. Whatever this guy saw, who knows? It's certainly not an airplane.
And Bill, whether it's law enforcement or a government agency that's investigating something similar to these sort of phenomena or even something else, those sort of investigations, that kind of legwork that you're putting in, certainly the lab work as well, that doesn't come at a cheap price. So how does all of this ultimately being able to be funded and be worked as an organization to put in all these different resources into this research you're doing?
Well, we're all volunteer army. The more you work for a group like this, the more you pay for the pleasure of your hobby, so to speak. We are a 501c3, both at the state level and at the international level. And so we do accept donations, and a lot of those things are quite helpful. It's not free to send something to a lab and have it investigated in a lab, and donations certainly help out in that regard. But yeah, it'd be sure nice to get some of my gas money back for all the places I've had to drive out to.
We're joined on today's program by Bill Konkolesky, the Michigan State Director of the Mutual UFO Network's chapter here in the Great Lakes State. Again, more information can be found on MUFON.com or MUFON.com, the Mutual UFO Network, established in 1969. Their chapter here in Michigan doing a lot of active work. And Bill, if people would like to get involved right here in Michigan with the Mutual UFO Network and work alongside you and so many others here in the Great Lakes State as they're doing these investigations and all this research into this sort of phenomena, these sort of occurrences across the state, how can they get involved?
Well, I always like to say if you see a UFO, go to MUFON.com to report it. If you want to investigate UFOs, go to MUFON.com and check out the information on how to do that. Information on how to contact our state chapter and me directly can be found at MUFON.com, or Michigan MUFON has its own website, mimufon.org.
Well, Bill, we appreciate having you on. Before we let you go, anything else that you'd like to say about MUFON, about its Michigan chapter, and the work that you're doing across the state to look into some of this really interesting stuff that happens quite normally here in the state of Michigan and around our country?
Oh, I always like to say now, the giggle factor is gone from the UFO investigation world. The government, the militaries, NASA, in the scientific field, these are all groups that are now all looking into the phenomena. So, an open hearing in Congress, a new funded group from the Pentagon, and again, NASA forming a committee to look into the phenomena. Um, the phenomena is very seriously being looked into now, and we are the grassroots arm, we like to think, of this big question of whether or not we're alone in the universe.
And you can help them out and join the grassroots right here in Michigan by joining the Mutual UFO Network and find more information again on their website, MUFON.com, MUFON.com. Bill, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you.